Welcome to the NDACo Orientation video series, Association Finances, the Big Picture. My name is Genny Dienstmann and I serve as Director of Operations for the Association of Counties and have been with the organization since 1995. The following video will give you a summary of the financial history of NDACo, provide a brief overview of our financial structure, including the dues calculation, and it'll also outline the responsibilities of the Finance Committee. NDACo, as created in legislation, is a nonprofit membership organization of counties. As a nonprofit, it has a board of directors, which according to its constitution is responsible for setting an annual budget. The NDACo budget can include a membership contribution, which is dues, that's authorized by the supporting legislation. In its early years, NDACo was almost totally dues dependent, and staff resources were focused on legislative advocacy, the annual conference, and the quarterly newsletter. Since the mid-1980s, program income has diversified revenue, which has changed the allocation of dues from 98% of the budget to now between 10 to 15% of revenue. The board has viewed the budget since that time as containing core and non-core services. Core services are those for which the organization was originally created and which generally have insufficient or no independent revenue streams to maintain them, and therefore are at least partially dues dependent. These services include legislative advocacy, board support, and administration. Non-core services, on the other hand, are those requested by the membership and authorized by the board that provide support for counties and county officials. Generally, these services are those that can be delivered or purchased more cost effectively collectively, rather than independently through each county. Some examples of these services are 911 network provision, drug and alcohol testing, workers' comp claims, and GIS mapping. Although non-core programs are often initiated with dues revenue and reserves, the concept is that non-core services become self-sustaining through program revenue. Over time, non-core revenue has actually grown to support core services as well. Recognizing the need to maintain core services, regardless of non-core revenues, the board has done two things: advance dues incrementally with a goal of supporting at least 50% of the cost of core services, and established reserves sufficient to continue core services should non-core program revenue become unavailable in the future. In the most recent 3-year average, the revenue budget of the association has looked like this, noting 84% of revenue is from non-core services and dues represent about 8% of the total budget. In the same 3-year average, the expenditure budget looks like this. Note that staff and board costs average 39% of the budget, which is much lower than similar associations across the country, as NDACo returns much of its non-core program revenue back to counties as distributions or purchase services. The allocation of the small but important dues component has evolved over time. Prior to the 1990s, total dues were apportioned among the counties completely on their relative taxable value. As counties became less similar in their finances and property tax became a smaller portion of the county budgets in energy counties, a study committee was formed to rethink the dues structure. In 1997, the new dues formula was adopted by the association. This formula allocates 50% of the dues on relative valuation and 50% on the relative county's total revenue budgets based on state audit reports. The valuation and revenue data are extracted from a 10-year Olympic average, which means we throw the highest and the lowest values out for each county. The formula also creates a maximum, 5 times the statewide average, and a minimum, a third of the statewide average dues, to eliminate the extremes. The Finance Committee has an important role in the fiduciary responsibility of the board. The association president appoints a Finance Committee, traditionally chaired by the first vice president. The committee works with staff on the development of an annual budget, reviews the dues structure and dues recommendations, for full board review and approval at their December meeting. The annual audit, which includes the finances of NDACo and its subsidiaries, ILG and NRG, is presented to the Finance Committee and reviewed in detail. The consulting audit firm then gives the full report to the board each summer. The association engages an independent consultant to conduct our annual audit services, which is iBailey. Thank you for reviewing this video. If you have any questions on the items described in this video, please reach out to our office. We're always here to help.